Hey Nicole, how's it going?
Hey, Craig, doing well.
How are things in Missouri?
Things
Did I say
are
it right, or did I totally
Missouri.
push
We prefer Missouri. Yes, but things are good.
Missouri?
Things are good. We're just moving along, and you know the norm, just like everybody else is doing. How
All
about you guys?
right.
Doing
So
well in New York?
yeah, we're doing okay. It's week two, and we actually had someone tested positive in our building, which we expected. And unfortunately, being in New York City is the epicenter, and the stuff's just super contagious and spreading. And it's like a big wave, and it will obviously make its way down to you. But yeah, week two's been okay. My kids are having a blast. My wife and I just, we're the ones really making the biggest transitions, but so far this week seems to be a bit better than last week. So I know you have two kids living in your home. Is your oldest two are adults, so they're out of your home.
Right.
So tell everyone about your two kids that are currently living at home and how's that transition going?
Okay. Well, we've got a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old, sophomore and freshman in high school. And things are pretty normal for us right now. We are a homeschooling family. We've homeschooled for the past 10 years, at least some variation of our kids, pretty much at all times. So, my son, who is 16, Eli, we homeschool, and he's going to homeschool through the remainder of high school. So, this quarantining, staying at home all the time, remote learning type situation is extremely normal for us. So we are truly not really feeling the effects too terribly much. Now, my daughter, who is 14, she's a freshman in high school. She actually went back to public school a couple of years ago. And since, our schools are closed as well, she's back home. But we're actually loving it because we were all together for so many years that the last 2 years we've kind of missed having her around. So it's really not been a huge adjustment for us. Um, we live in a little bit bigger home than what a typical New York apartment would be. So we're not all sitting at the kitchen table doing our various work, for 9 hours a day. We all are kind of have our own space and still have the ability to get outside. We live in a rural community. Our neighbors are several feet away if they are even outside at the same time as we are. So we can still go to our local park and probably not see a soul.
Oh
Um,
wow. Okay,
yeah, I mean, we're still pretty much able to do what we would normally do, and we're not real goers anyway. So
hmm
it's not really as big a deal, which I know sounds annoying to people who are, going crazy right now, but we're doing okay.
But what would be really helpful is that for, the millions of people that are transitioning to homeschooling, um, you know, maybe you can just talk about that for a bit. Because I think what's interesting, we had this conversation earlier, is I think there's a misconception of what homeschooling is, what it should look like.
Mhm.
And so maybe you can tell parents about that.
Yeah, what we had talked about previously and still holds true. And I would tell any person who was even voluntarily making a decision to become a homeschool family is do not try to replicate school. And that was a hard lesson I had to learn as well. Our first homeschooled student was my second child, who's now 23, and when he was going into the 8th grade. And of course, my first initial reaction was he needed a desk, he needed we needed a blackboard, we needed all these things exactly like was at school. And what we very shortly learned was 90% of the schooling that we did was sitting on the couch, sometimes with him flipped completely upside down or under a blanket. um, it did not look anything like school.
Mhm.
And having my two teenagers now, they are so close in age, and we've always pretty much done the same schoolwork just because of their age, their close proximity and their age, but they are two completely different students. So,
Mhm.
and in our little school of two,
Mhm.
I do students that are the same. So although we might have been learning the same concept, I might have to present it to them, and typically did have to present it to them and still do in two completely different ways. They have strong suits and weaknesses that completely are opposite of each other. So I think that's the advice I would give is just, first of all, your kids are going through kind of a stressful time right now, especially if they're used to
Mhm.
a lot of activity and a lot of socialization and being busy with their schools, and now they're kind of stuck in this stagnant position. And they're stressed and they don't understand what's going on. And so that's the first reason why you don't want to have to pile all this, intense schoolwork on them. Give them a break.
That's a really important point because I think parents are like, oh my God, I don't want my kid to miss a beat. Like, and like it's like they're running a marathon. And what people have to realize is that what's really important at the end of the day, safety is important, really. But what it's a transitional period, right?
It
and
is.
and everyone has to realize that what their kids were doing at school in terms of the amount of work, amount of
Right.
hours, that will
Right.
not be duplicated right now. And
No,
it's fine,
it is. If you think
everyone is being totally okay.
right, and if you think about it, students at school, the actual amount of instruction time is
Hmm.
is not a full school day. By the
Right.
time they transition
Yeah.
from one class to another and they have class discussions and they go to the restroom and they get a drink of water and all of these things are going on, they may be getting 3 to 4 hours total of actual instruction. So your
Okay.
kids do not need to sit, they don't need to sit at a desk or at the kitchen table from 8 o'clock in the morning until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That's not
Mhm.
realistic as far as instruction. So short lessons, dabble in the different things that they're learning. Of course, don't let them sit on their Xbox for, 12 hours a day, but, do lots of reading, do read
So,
alouds together as a family. That's
yeah.
huge.
So speaking of Xbox, so right, another thing that's being blurred is for non-homeschool families was the week versus weekend, and now it's a bit different. For some kids, see it as like a 7-day weekend. So if you're a parent, how do you set up those rules in terms of do you make a distinction between a weekday versus weekend? How do you make a distinction with the rules for when you can play Xbox during the school day? Now you're home, 24/7. So, because for kids, they may not see that distinction. They say, there's an Xbox. I just did some work. I can play on the Xbox. So, how do parents navigate that now that they're home 7 days a week with their kids?
Well, I think what I always did with my kids is we run a pretty tight ship when it comes to homeschooling, just because this is our primary source of education and we do it all year. We homeschool 12 months out of the year. Because of that, it allows us to decrease the amount of work that we're doing during the day. We
Mm-hmm.
run on a Monday through Friday schedule. Um, Generally, we run from about 10 o'clock in the morning till about 4 o'clock in the afternoon with a break for lunch. So the approach I've always taken with my kids with schooling is, I need you for this amount of time to do
Mm-hmm.
this amount of work. And
Mm-hmm.
if we have a good attitude and we get to it and we get it done and we get it done the best of our ability, then when that time period is over, then
Mm-hmm.
the time is yours. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not very restrictive with my kids as far as technology. I feel like if they're putting in the work that I need for them to put in, that they're allowed to have the free time that they want to have in the way that they want to have it. One of my kids, her idea of free time is to put her headset on and listen to musical soundtracks constantly and do some art. That's what she likes to do. My son likes to get an Xbox, and his older brother lives in South Carolina, and that is the way that they spend time together is playing
Got
Xbox together. So I just, you can't let your kids become slugs,
Yep.
but they are kids.
Of
And
course.
if you
Absolutely.
it with the idea that education is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week,
Mm-hmm.
everything is education. It
Mm-hmm.
freedom to kind of get up from the desk. I will tell you, my kids learn things on Xbox.
Yeah.
They are getting some education there, so it's fine. It's all fine.
So how do you make that pact with your kids? So let's say, right now, let's say every school is different, but let's say, and it depends on the age of your child and the developmental status for your child. But let's say you find out, I don't know how it works with your kids, but let's say you find out what work is due or is expected,
Right.
for the week. How do you distribute that? Like, how do you say, okay, like this is due, I need have this done by Monday. I need to have this done by Tuesday. You know what I mean? So how do you figure that out?
And again, that's going to probably vary by your children.
Okay.
My two children, completely different. My son is very scheduled, very scheduled. So he gets his schoolwork. Basically, he knows at the beginning of the week everything that he has to have done for the week. And he schedules it out, a portion of each subject for each day. So his Monday, he gets up at the same time every Monday. He does the same morning routine. He starts school at the same time every single day. He pretty much does the same subjects in the same order for the most part, unless he
Mm-hmm.
flip-flopping something, which is his freedom. But he
Mm-hmm.
sets up to be completed by Friday, a little
Mm-hmm.
bit every day. My daughter, total opposite. She wakes
Mm-hmm.
up when she feels like it. She does schoolwork when she's in the mood. But when she's
Mm-hmm.
in the mood, that means she has just decided to do 6 hours of math, and
Mm-hmm.
she'll do all of her English. And she might do it in the
Mm-hmm.
evenings. She sometimes will do some work on the weekends. And again, my philosophy has always been, as long as they are getting their work done, I allow
Mm-hmm.
them to do that kind of in their own sweet spot. What is their best way of doing it that they're going to get the most out of what they're learning? And for my
So,
son, it's scheduled, and for my daughter, it's not.
so what it sounds like for the most part, it's how to figure out, they talk about learning profiles, let's call it a productivity profile, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you, as the parent, how to get your kids productive in terms of setting up a model for them. And your youngest two kids, they're different, right? So you've realized they're very different. They have different productivity models, and it works, right? And
Right.
and would you kind of maybe tell parents that they, maybe if they're struggling right now, maybe, and a lot of parents may think, oh, there's one model for all of my kids if they have more than one child, but maybe to look at each kid differently and how to structure in a way where each child is productive based on their inherent productivity model. I'm just making this
Right.
up.
And I think the younger they were, the
Uh-huh.
the more I guided that, because
Yes.
they
Yes.
really weren't cognitively developed enough to understand that about
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
So I have the benefit of 10 years of experience with my kids doing this exact thing. So I know, I mean, I this is exactly how they are in their weekend chores. I mean, my son wakes up on Sunday mornings and boom, 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 does these chores. And my daughter,
Well,
she'll
this
do her
is
Sunday night at 10 o'clock.
Yeah. No, and I think this is also really important because the homeschooling, which my wife and I have talked about it, is also not only in terms of making sure they're homeschooled, but we want to make sure that they are just better citizens in the house, right? So helping out, and these are all like chores, these are daily living, these are functional real life skills that you have to explicitly teach. So I think this is also a wonderful opportunity for kids that typically are not helping their parents, a good opportunity for them not only to learn these skills, because at some point they have to learn them. If they don't learn them, they'll never do them, right? And also, if you think from a family productivity standpoint, right, that the more they help contribute to the family, right, which should put ultimately eventually less stress on the
Right.
parent or the parents, right? And it's
Right.
also a community feel as well. It's like, hey, we're all helping each other out, right?
And I think that ultimately that actually ends up giving them more free time, um, when,
Okay.
when they pitch in the little bits that they do when they're
Hmm.
supposed to. It gives everyone in the family free time. And I think that it's an important lesson for children to understand, especially teenagers, is that, mom or dad are not, why is our free time less important than theirs? And
Yep.
if I'm doing everything, I mean, we talk about this just on in their weekend chores. If I did for them which I used to, when they were littler, I did. But if I
Of course.
did those things
Yeah.
for them every
Yeah.
every weekend, that would
Mm-hmm.
take out about 6 hours of my weekend for my personal time, which then I'm cranky. Then I'm all over them, and they actually end up with less free time because I'm up in their face the entire weekend because I'm
Right.
frustrated. So this
Right.
is it's a give and take. And I think the most important thing, going
Mm-hmm.
back to talking about how do you set this up with your kids, I think it's communication and
Mm-hmm.
letting your kids have a voice and
Mm-hmm.
opinion. You get to still make the final decision, but as
So here, let's
If
play devil advocate. All right, let's say there's a parent. It's like, all right, Nicole, this week I'm going to let my 16-year-old daughter. She feels this week her productivity is, she wants to do X, Y, Z, and I'm going to let her do that. And then come Friday, come Saturday, I'm going to see how productive she is. And let's say devil's advocate, she's not that productive. She
right.
was really
Mhm.
distracted, chatting with her friends, did half of the work she's supposed to. Then what do I do? What should,
Then
how can you guide me?
that's when you treat your child, your teenager, as a teenager, and you
Mm-hmm.
have a discussion with them that, okay, this didn't work. Now I need
Mm-hmm.
from you what you think we need to do to make it work. And if your student or your child is not able to give you some concrete workable solutions, then you as the parent then step in and institute some other plan. And really that's kind of I I had kind of set up their weekend chores. I mean, I bring up chores just because this is something that we've just recently talked about. But, I would say, Bran, have you put in your laundry? Bran, have you, did you vacuum yet? And one day she actually stopped me and said, Mom,
You're doing the head nod there. I was like, I felt like I was, I was like, oh my God, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
she said, I will do it. I promise you. I'm the kind of, and she just said this, I'm the kind of person that all of a sudden I'll get in the mood and it will get done. And I just backed up and I said, okay, as long as it's done, I'm going to let you do it. When my oldest son was little bitty, I used to say, I don't care how you get to the bathtub. I don't care if you hop like a bunny, slither like a snake.
Yeah,
I don't care how you do it as long as you get there. And I think
yeah.
that's the same concept you can even have with your teenager. We are not the same as every other person that we deal with.
Mhm.
So why do we expect that our teenagers or our kids are going to be the same? They're going to have different ways, like you said, models of productivity that work for them. And I
Mhm.
think it's really an actually great time to dip into that a little bit and let your kids have a little bit of ownership and let them see if they can show you that they have these areas of responsibility that maybe you haven't ever had the opportunity to witness before. And I will tell you, my kids have you know bottom line, they have to get these things done. They have to get them done. And like I
Mhm.
said, I don't they do it while they're hopping like a bunny, slithering like a snake, as long as
Right.
it's done right. And so I've kind of just given them this leeway to work some of those things out themselves. And I will tell you, if they don't get it done, there are consequences for that. That's when the Xbox goes away and the cell phone goes away and the musicals go away and all of those things go away. And then
But
next
with
week
the
we're going to away.
but with the consequences, what I think what's really important is that some parents, what they might do is like, hey, you didn't do this, and they pull the Xbox like suddenly. And I know that you can get very emotional. Parent can get easily very emotional as they get let down by their child. But I know generally that's not the right way to do it. Like it's right. So how do your is the from what I've learned, I don't have teenagers, but from what I've been told is that again it comes down to the communication, the expectations, and they know that if they don't do XYZ there is a consequence. It's not like a sudden all of a sudden like impromptu like, oh, you're punished. Is that stuff I know breeds resentment